What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. Okay, so continuing our series on the Incredible Hulk, we're actually kind of running low on stuff that we're going to be doing. We're we're getting caught up pretty fast with regards to the start of all new, all different Marvel. But this one is actually really cool. This one's called Gods and Monsters, and this one deals with the idea of the Incredible Hulk lifting Thor's hammer, and it's actually really cool. It's one of my favorite stories. It looks weird though. The art kind of looks like something out of Aeon Flux. I don't know how many of you guys ever watched that show back in the day. It was really popular back in the day on MTV, but it's still, still kind of interesting. In terms of the artwork though, it's kind of catchy, but it's also kind of weird. But in any event, this really deals a lot with a character named Patty, with a character named Patricia Woolman. I almost wanted to say Wolfman, with Patricia Woolman. And what Banner does is he actually gives us one of the reasons for the character of Patty. Now, the other half of this is the idea of Uru metal, that at some point along the line, S.H.I.E.L.D. was basically granted a piece of Uru metal by Thor, either as a gift or as some sort of study thing. But the funny thing about this is that Uru metal in and of itself is a very enchantable metal. Remember, we had talked about the differences between Uru metal, vibranium, adamantium. Adamantium is just an extremely durable metal. Vibranium, or at least Wakandan vibranium, contains magical properties that basically allow it to amplify magic as well as sound. Uru metal amplifies magic. That's really kind of the extent of it. I mean, it's durable insofar as that it's a metal from another dimension, but it's still pretty durable. But the other half of this is that it also allows its user to open up portals. Now, one of the funny things here is that Marvel's going to delve into the idea of what it is that allows people to wield Thor's hammer in terms of why it is that a person who isn't worthy isn't able to pick it up. And it really is just kind of one of these different explanations that's given, because Marvel's never really come out and said, here's the unified reason for why it is that people can't pick up the hammer of Thor. Different writers do it differently. For example, Jason Aaron kind of gave us one particular idea in the sense of the hammer sentient. Another writer later on down the line may come along and write a different story on what goes on with the hammer. It's really this interesting aspect in Marvel Comics, but it's something they never fully, harken on. But the problem here is that what it is that Bruce Banner and his guys are looking for is a very particular material that can only be accessed or really only be gained from the realm of the Frost Giants. The problem with this is that anytime the Frost Giants realize that somebody has stumbled upon their whole area, when somebody's looking for this material, Eiderdoom, I think is what it's called, or anything else, the Frost Giants will just kill them and not really even ask any questions. Again, they're extremely territorial, but it's also kind of their realm. So it would be like a person walking into your house, not asking permission, just showing up. You would probably help them understand the error of their ways and presumably help them finish with all their living. If you live in Kentucky, they'll just shoot at you. But the fact remains here, with regards to Thor becoming aware of the fact that Bruce Banner and his team have shown up in Jotunheim, Thor immediately takes off and tries to help him out. The problem with this is that Thor doesn't know who they are. And that's kind of an interesting scenario, because it's like, well, why doesn't Thor know who they are? And again, it really kind of asks us a few questions, have they transported to another dimension? Is this like another universe? Because remember, in Marvel Comics, you have the multiverse, but every universe has its own version of Asgard. That's the reason why the Ultimate Universe had its own version of Thor that was totally different from the main Marvel Universe version of Thor. They have their own Asgard, Jotunheim, their own Frost Giants, all that kind of good stuff. So again, with Bruce Banner turning into Hulk and then fighting alongside Thor, the idea is, what in the world is going on? Why doesn't Thor know who they are? But in the immediate, it's doing their best to defeat the Frost Giants. Now, this is kind of a funny moment, because Thor throws his hammer and takes out one of the Frost Giants, and then the Incredible Hulk picks it up. Now, this is cool, because what this does is it really shows us an instance on why it is that a person can lift it, in the sense that Hulk, for whatever reason, has been deemed worthy. And that's kind of the issue with the hammer of Thor. There's no definitive reason on what makes a person worthy. It's all contextual. For example, when Beta Ray Bill first showed up in Marvel Comics, he was perceived as being a bad guy. It was a ship that was floating through the solar system. Nick Fury at S.H.I.E.L.D. asked Thor to check it out. Thor showed up. Beta Ray Bill thought that Thor was an enemy. Thor was, that Thor was a threat. The two of them fought. Beta Ray Bill picked up Thor's hammer, only for us to find out that Beta Ray Bill was basically this sort of protector for the last of his race. He was escorting them through the solar system, trying to find a safe place for them to live. And so Beta Ray Bill basically turned out to be a good guy. With the Incredible Hulk, he's not good or bad. He's just the Hulk. Sometimes he fights on behalf of bad guys. More often than not, he fights on the side of good guys. But I mean, remember the enchantment on the hammer, guys. The enchantment says, whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. There's nothing to indicate that the hammer could only be wielded by good guys. The hammer was always wielded by good guys until it wasn't. So again, that's one of those funny things. People kind of make this mistake of saying, well, only good guys can lift the hammer, not fully understanding what it means when it comes to the worthiness enchantment, because there is no definitive meaning to it. And so again, it's really kind of an interesting scenario here, because we don't usually get to see things like this. The funny thing about this is that immediately after Thor picks it up, the Frost Giants start freaking out, because it was like, oh my God, he picked up the hammer of Thor. Thor. But then, the Incredible Hulk just kind of gets whisked away, only for us to find out that Thor had recalled his hammer. And so the question that's asked here is, did the Incredible Hulk pick it up, or did he just grab it while it was on its way to Thor? Now, of course, the implication here is that the Incredible Hulk picked it up. I mean, he lifted the hammer of Thor. And I guess we could kind of debate this all day long, but for me, that's how it looked from my perspective. Anyway, when I was reading it. The other funny thing about this is that when the Incredible Hulk calms down, when the battle is effectively over, when it really kind of comes to an end, one last Frost Giant had basically managed to reach through the portal. Now, the reason why this matters is because of the fact that one of Bruce Banner's staff named Melinda was tasked with making sure the portal stayed open so that when the mission of Banner and his team was done, they could basically go back through the portal again. But with this Frost Giant reaching in, while the portal is closed, while it means that Bruce Banner and his team can't come back, this Frost Giant's also temporarily defeated, but it also kind of stretches the story out a little bit because at this point now, it's how do they get back home? Once everything begins to calm down, once the entire event begins to come to a close, what we find out is the reason why Thor doesn't know who Bruce Banner is because of the fact that they're in the past. They opened a portal through space and time. Now, this is why I don't really like time travel when it comes to comic books. For me, time travel can be used compellingly, but it's very rarely ever done. Instead, time travel is usually a plot device used by writers who just don't know how to end a story and just kind of invoking it for the sake of invoking it. Now, the entire basis behind this story is time travel, but the issue with this is that, again, it could have given us a far more interesting situation. Not only that, for whatever reason that I will never be able to comprehend, and I don't quite know why, Mark Waid loves time travel, but he's all about time travel and Kane the Conqueror. It's the ninth wonder of the world. Why does Mark Waid love Kane the Conqueror? I have no idea. Kane the Conqueror is boring to me. But the fact remains here, this really kind of sets the stage for a conversation with regards to Bruce Banner and his team, as well as the Frost Giants to sort of, remuster their forces and eventually, go back and attack the Incredible Hulk and those guys again. Now, the other half of this is the girl named Patty. The reason why Bruce Banner had brought her on this mission in the first place is because Patty's basically dying from a degenerative brain disease, meaning it's only a matter of time before her brain degenerates to the point that she'll basically start losing control of her bodily functions and she'll basically just kind of die, essentially, is really all that'll happen. But the idea of Bruce Banner bringing her here was to really kind of say, look, there's a world beyond what you're used to. We can find a way to solve your crisis. We can find a way to solve your problem. But ultimately, the idea is that unless you have a solution at hand, I don't care. It's almost granting her, wishful thinking. The other half of this is explaining the idea about why it is that people can't lift the hammer. And it's really kind of funny here because Bruce Banner says, well, there's two schools of thought. There's the school of thought about science, which basically says that the hammer was forged by the dwarves and it was forged using graviton particles, meaning that when a person who's not worthy enough to lift the hammer tries to pick it up, the hammer will increase its own mass. Now, that's really kind of an interesting concept because when it comes to like the planet Earth, for example, the gravitational pull of the Earth is 9.8 meters per second squared. But if I were to drop you from a point that's, from a high enough point on Earth, you would start falling until you reached 9.8 meters per second squared. And then you would actually just get used to it. Like, you would almost feel like you were standing still, or you wouldn't really feel that jerking sensation as you're falling. It would almost be like you're floating and the world's moving around you. At least you would believe that until you hit the ground and died. But the fact remains that this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And the reason why is because of the fact that if the hammer kind of invokes the gravitational pull of the Earth, then it can only weigh so much. It's not an infinite weight. It means that, it gets into weird sciencey stuff. Basically, it would say, look, I'm going to keep increasing my mass until the point that I become, heavy enough that people can't lift me, but the hammer cannot become infinitely heavy. The Incredible Hulk, with an infinite level of strength, if he pulled at the hammer long enough and got angry at the hammer long enough, he would be able to lift it. If for no other reason, then the Earth's gravitational pull is not infinite. So again, it's really kind of a weird sciencey sort of thing. At least that's the explanation that they offer in terms of comics. Now, in terms of real life physics, I couldn't even begin to offer you an answer on that scenario. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a super knowledgeable science guy, but the other half of this is that Bruce Banner said there's also another school of thought that says it is just magic. That's all it is. We can't explain it. It's just magic. It just works that way. No one knows why. It just does. So again, it's one of these kind of funny scenarios where it's like sometimes there is no answer to the question that we're asking. Sometimes that's just how it is. That's just the way it works. Now, following this, the story ends pretty quick. I mean, it wraps up pretty fast. The Frost Giants attacking Bruce Banner, and then him and his guys, making it to the portal that's been reopened by Maria Hill and Phil Coulson. And that's really it. They managed to defeat some of the Frost Giants, make their escape, and everybody just kind of calls it a day. Things wrap up pretty fast. Again, this is kind of an interim story. It's not designed to be like a core part of what's going on in the Incredible Hulk. It's really just kind of one of those filler stories, which is why the art is so different from the last issue and from the issues that we'll see coming up. But it's just kind of a little fun little story about the Incredible Hulk picking up the hammer of Thor. Anyway, guys, if you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and let me know down in the comments section. Let me know, because I'm kind of curious. Do you think the Incredible Hulk could lift the hammer of Thor just by pure strength? Not even taking into a worthiness enchantment. Do you think that just by strength alone, the Incredible Hulk would be able to lift the hammer of Thor at some point along the line? I'm just kind of curious what your all's thought is on that. But anyway, guys, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end, and I will catch you all later. Peace.